People frequently ask me why we've started another master plan after just finishing one in 2004, and the answer to that is that it's time. The FAA really looks at a master plan for an airport as an important planning document, important kind of future cast to see what pressures might be on the airport moving forward, and we'll probably do another one in another 5 to 10 years after we complete this one. And the goals really is to make sure that you look out 20 years. You think about what those pressures might be about on the airport, and you know, when I break it down, it really comes down to space reservation, and it comes down to protecting options for the community moving forward. One of the main components of the master plan is to make sure you look at all parts of the airport, but certainly one of the key components of the master plan is the terminal building. And so when we've looked at how those needs of the terminal building are going to change over the next few years and into the future, we want to make sure we have enough space set aside so that the community can look at a terminal building if they desire to at some point in the future. If you look over my left shoulder, the terminal building as it sits today is nestled down in the trees, and it's about 45,000 square feet. What we've looked at for planning purposes is an 80,000 square foot terminal building. Now that number wasn't reached by great scientific means, but it was somewhat logical by adding up the number of square feet you might need for ticketing and baggage claim and security and those things. Now what ultimately might be considered to be built is very much different, and that would involve a very complete analysis with several years probably worth of work to understand what that terminal building might feel and look like should we ever give direction to go forward with that facility. Well, the concept that's currently in front of the community and we're asking for input on would use a phased approach to move the terminal building further up valley, really closer to the buttermilk side, just a couple hundred yards from the existing facility. And so within that facility, we'd expect good connectability to transit. We heard about that from the community. We heard about how they'd want it to be safe and efficient. They don't want a monument to the community. They really want it just to be about making sure that passengers have a good experience coming and going. We need to consider parking at the airport because it is a key way that people get to our airport. And we have to understand that a certain number of people simply can't use RAFTA or other means to get to the airport. So when we look at automobile parking, we have to think about having enough that people can have a stall when they really need it here at the airport, but also to consider we don't want to encourage the use of automobiles in our community. So when we think about a parking structure, we think that's a good balance that considers the users of the airport as well as protecting cars from being shuffled off airport and into the Aspen Area Business Center or the North 40. Yeah, what we're looking at is 100% below ground parking structure. So that gives us a chance to use the top of it for either a plaza or green space, or it could be a site for photovoltaic and help minimize the environmental impact of energy consumption in the Upper Valley. We have about 950 automobile parking stalls on the airport today. We'd look to increase that in the forecast period of 20 years by an additional 350 positions. The need for us to be able to find the right balance between having enough at the airport and not too many stalls is really a difficult one, and we're working hard to find the right balance of those two equations. A few weeks ago I was up with Old Snowmass Caucus, and I had a person who specifically pulled me aside and said, I don't have another way to get to the airport other than by either asking someone to take me to the airport, pick me up, which has double traffic on Highway 82, or they need to drive themselves. It's unfortunate you cannot park in a RAFTA lot overnight, so that option is really off the table for them. So that's a good example of a customer that needs to be able to find a way by personal automobile to the airport. Well, I'm here on the east side of the airport, which is where our current fixed base operator, Atlantic Aviation, does its operations. Atlantic Aviation provides services, as most fixed base operators do, to fueling for both general aviation and commercial aviation, as well as to pilot support facilities, including flight training and those kind of things. Well, one of the items that the master plan needed to study was how would a second fixed base operator fit in on the airport. A second fixed base operator in the current concept would be located just north of the Airport Operations Center on the west side of the airport. There would be facilities that would include a relatively small hangar, a maintenance hangar for servicing of aircraft, along with a location where pilots would meet and greet their passengers as well as take care of their pre-flight planning activities. Earlier renditions of the master plan had a large amount of hangar space that had been shown on that side of the airport as well. That's now been removed at the direction of the Board of County Commissioners as a way to really lower the visual impacts of the site. Now, while it won't be seen from Highway 82 or wouldn't expect it to be seen from Highway 82, the sites that would be directly visual to the site would be Starwood and McLean Flats. So we're trying very hard to make sure that any of those changes would be minimized in terms of their visual impact. And I think it's also important to think about that the hangar would not be a white shelled metal building. It would be designed to blend into the hillside, probably very similar to our Airport Operations Center as well. One of the key reasons that we're even doing a master plan at the airport, since we finished one in 2004, is because of the pressure that we've received and specific interest in providing that second fixed base operator services. At last count, the number of folks that have approached us about providing that business service has approached 10 different entities. And so we wanted to make sure that the airport master plan really gave thoughtful consideration about how a second FBO would fit into our community on the airport and how would those operations work for all of us. We do have some limitations and pressures from the FAA as well as to make space available should someone want to provide those kind of businesses. And that's really related to the fact that we're open as a public use airport, and that is a requirement that the FAA expects of communities when they have a public use facility like ours. We buy our power from wind, so that's a way that we help make a difference. When we make projects happen, we have a sustainability plan that we integrate into that construction project. We have a strong desire to make sure that we're doing what things we can do to help minimize our environmental footprint. We have a very active noise program to keep down the amount of aircraft noise and the number of people who are exposed to that. We've worked really hard at lowering our greenhouse gases as part of those components that the county has control over. And the county commissioners have made that a very high priority mission for us, that we make sure that we look at safety, efficiency, and environmental sustainability. I think another one is the Airport Operations Center, where we put in a grass roof. We put in a lot of landscaping around it to soften its visual component to the community. And I think we should take a little bit of pride in how we've tried to think through our projects and make sure that they're done to the highest standards possible. Any of the components in the master plan obviously would have to be held to those very, very high standards. You know, I've asked by the community, how would we go about paying for any of the things that are talked about within the master plan? And of course, we're really looking at a 20-year forecast period, and so any changes would be looking out over several decades. However, what's interesting about the airport, especially as it relates to being in county government, is that we generate our own fees and our own revenue sources to pay for our operations. So if you use the airport, you're going to contribute to the airport's health. If you're not, then you don't have to pay, because we do not rely on any property tax or sales tax dollars to make the airport functional. We also use FAA grants to help us fund the airport, but they're not for operations. Those are really safety and efficiency enhancements, and those dollars come from airline ticket taxes and freight that's sold, sent by air, those kind of things. And so, once again, it's a user-based system. Those monies go into a trust fund that come back for airport efficiency and safety-related items, and making a strong national transportation system. So that's how the airport goes forward. If we figure out how to pay for all these pieces, it'll be because the revenue streams are in place, and we would not be dependent upon the locals to help us fund these projects, or would they be at risk through any other means of the debt service? Those kind of thought processes are integral into this master plan, so that we're trying to do the right thing for the community, not only today, but well into the future.